When are we going to see a Nancy Richardson Fischer zombie novel? When's that happening?
Other people do it so much better than me. But I just appreciate zombies. Like 28 Days Later is my favorite movie ever for a zombie movie. What's your favorite zombie movie?
Oh, zombie movie. Ooh, that's a tricky question. I'm tempted to say Dawn of the Dead, the Zack Snyder remake. That's definitely very high up there, although 28 Days Later is right there neck and neck.
I loved it. I love the character development in that one.
My brother said something after I saw that with him, and he said something with me that stayed with me forever after. And it was, Shaun of the Dead probably edges out a couple of those. But about 28 Days Later, because, spoilers slightly, by the time we get to the end, the whole deal is our hero, Scarecrow, I can't remember his name.
Cillian Murphy.
Yes. He's all worked up and covered in blood, and you can't tell if he's infected or not because mankind is just that violent as well. My brother called that the zombies don't suck, you suck ending. And that stayed with me forever because every time I watch a zombie story or read a zombie novel, I'm looking for that zombies don't suck, you suck.
There's just something about zombie stories that it's kind of like, did you ever read The Stand, Stephen King's The Stand?
Oh, of course.
So it's the same thing where there's something that is so threatening, that's taken out so many people, and then humanity is so tiny, and you band together, and you see under pressure who people become, whether they retain their humanity or like in The Walking Dead, do they become Negan, or not, and to me, that's what's always so fascinating about anything zombie is how people either stay good or turn into a worse monster than the one they're fighting.
Which, unfortunately, I think is most of us in everyday life.
Right.
Because a nice zombie story will get you to where you're reading about just your struggles, but amplified times 100.
Exactly.
And it puts things in perspective. Like, I'm really concerned about whether or not I'm going to pay this bill. I'm concerned about what's happening with my family. But if zombies were attacking, that would really raise the stakes. Same concern, but now right. I feel better about my smaller issue because I don't have to kill a bunch of zombies.
That's a great point. That's why I think we love them.
And one book I never get tired of plugging is I, Zombie by Hugh Howey. I've got a bunch of favorite zombie books, including Courtney Summers' Please Remain Calm. That's a great one. But I, Zombie it's not a spoiler because he tells you right in chapter 1. He writes from the perspective of zombies, but the deal is that the people are still who they are inside. They just no longer have any control over themselves. So like one gentleman has to watch himself attack and kill his mother.
Oh my gosh.
It's just brutal. But his thematic concern is that we're all kind of like that in real life already because so much of what we do is based on momentum, and we're all kind of watching ourselves act on a regular basis.
That's a really good point. I haven't read that, but I'm going to put it on my list because that sounds
it's worth it.
Yeah,
I'm always thrilled when I find a slightly new take on zombies where it's an insight. Oh, I haven't seen that one before. And that was like, I got shut the front door. This is like zombie book number 50 that I'm reading, and I haven't seen this one yet.
Yeah, I love that too. I think that's why I love Stephen King in general, because every time I read something that he's written, a lot of times, I write young adult novels. I love young adult novels, but because I write young adult novels, a lot of times I know where they're going. I never really know necessarily where Stephen King's going. So every time he has a new book come out, I'm always so excited to get to read it and not even try and figure out where it's going.
Did you read The Institute yet?
I just finished it last week.
It's excellent, isn't it?
I absolutely loved it. Couldn't put it down. It's interesting to me, too, that you have a 12-year-old boy, and yes, he was a genius, but it's an adult novel, and that adults are so fascinated with because a lot of his stories have young protagonists, but that they really appeal to adults.
I always think my favorite young adult novel is It, even though it's technically not a young adult novel.
Right.
It's close enough.
Right. Well, because I read a lot of those books as a young adult too. So, or like The Gunslinger. That's a young adult novel, but it's got some very adult themes to it. And also, for me, one of the best endings of a really super long saga. For me, did you read The Gunslinger?
Oh, of course.
So the end, which I'm not going to say, obviously, I just went, okay, perfect. Like, I'm good with it, which I'm always worried when it's that long that it's not going to wrap up in a way that I like, but I love the way it wrapped up.
I kind of saw that one coming by about book 2.
Oh, you did?
And it was plenty of wonderful stories that,
right.
And I think he explicitly states a couple of times, don't worry about the ending, it's the journey, which is the best way to go about it.
Right.
I'm not crazy about Song of Susanna. I felt like, because he had his car accident in there, that he wrote 4 amazing novels, or right up to Wolves of the Calla. My wife thinks I'm crazy. Wizard of Glass is my favorite. She violently disagrees with me. She wrote her master's thesis on The Gunslinger. So she went through 3 different versions and did a editorial analysis, but they call it something else, where you basically go through and list every change made and try and figure out why those changes were made over 3 different versions.
Wow.
Which is why I know that in The Gunslinger, at one point he comes into the town of Toll, I believe, and Roland says, "Hey, how's it hanging?" And then, like 10 years later, Stephen King, when more mature, more wizened, comes back and says, "How's it hanging?" No, how are they hanging? And then in the newest final version, it's long days and pleasant nights to get the high speech worked in. That's just one of those things I found fascinating. I love thinking of young Stephen King, 10 years in, after writing The Gunslinger. How's it hanging? What was young me thinking?
Right. That's awesome.
Hey. But, because he had that accident, I felt like Wolves of the Calla is the last of the one-off adventures. They're all connected, but the first 5 of them all feel like their own thing. And then Song of Susanna kind of bleeds into The Dark Tower, and I felt like there were things that were a little bit rushed, where I wish, now that we know, of course, that he was going to be around with plenty of time to space this out a little bit more, I wish he'd waited to publish him and just kind of hang on to him for a bit and then revised him later.
He probably wasn't sure what was going to happen. I mean, that was a big accident. So I can imagine he felt a sense of pressure to keep producing.
Oh, I'm sure he was terrified, but I wish that Walter O'Dim specifically had met a better end. Right. Without spoiling. That was one of those that made me set the book down. I go, man, really? But that ending was phenomenal.
Yeah, the ending was perfect for me.
And with The Institute, I thought that was one of his best in many years, probably since Revival, which was my previous favorite of his more modern ones. But there were a couple of moments in there where if I had been in his critique group, I'd have said, Stephen, I just don't buy that today's kids are talking about Gone with the Wind. Maybe they are. I didn't buy that they were going to say chillins. That's an old one. That's a Stephen King classic. And there were a couple of actors that they talked about that even for a boy genius at the age of 12, I didn't think he'd reach back to Stephen King's childhood for that reference. No, but those are such small, nitpicky things when what he's doing is so next level beyond most books I ever read. That's like, let him have it.
Exactly. If he wants to put those in, it's okay.
There were a couple that made me cringe a little bit. Like, is that what happens when you get to the Stephen King level? Nobody says, hey, Mr. King, don't you think that Twitter might have thoughts on this?
Probably they don't.
Probably there's no sensitivity reader that comes in. And
yeah.
And Stephen King, J.K. Rowling, these are I try never to author shame or call that they're on the list of it's okay, they're so big they don't know I exist, it's fine.
Right.